Well, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Belligerent Beavs Podcast, and we are once again privileged to have another great guest. We just keep lining them up this time of year. We're shifting over to the men's basketball space. We are honored to have one of the best Oregon State men's basketball players of all time, one of the conductors of the Orange Express from the early 80s, also a trailblazer great for all of our Blazer fans listening. Number 33 in the rafters and number 1 in our hearts right now. It's Steve Johnson. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time with us tonight. We're very thrilled to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me on. You guys are all young, and I'm glad to know that I think you were alive. I don't know if you were alive when I played, but anyway.
We were not, but we were all born in the 80s, though.
Yeah.
So we're elder millennials.
Close enough.
I do have to say, your parents had to clue you in on who the hell we were. Okay.
Well,
and they did.
And I have to say, my dad went to Oregon State when you were playing there. So when I told him you were going to be on, he was a little starstruck. So that was cool.
Right. My dad did not, but Mr. Johnson, I grew up in the Midwest too, and when it came time for me to pick a school and I picked Oregon State and we started talking about basketball, the first thing he said was not about Gary Payton or Ralph Miller. The first thing he said was Steve Johnson had a hell of a hook shot. So I learned about your hook and how unguardable it was before I even stepped foot on campus.
The funny thing, though, is if you went back to the archives of the photography from the games, and you will find it's 101 ways to shoot a layup, because they were so afraid of my hook shot and they did everything to take it away. They ended up giving me layups. That's why I shot such a high percentage. I didn't shoot a lot of hook shots.
Pick your poison.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll for sure
fear them.
Exactly. We'll for sure talk about some on-court memories and those great moments from your time as well. But the top shelf item we reached out to you that several Beaver fans have read by now, a great story on CarrieEggers.com about your intention to start a NIL collective specifically supporting the men's basketball program, and how to fix, revitalize, invigorate, whatever word you want to choose. Oregon State men's basketball is a topic that seems to get talked about among Beaver fans damn near constantly. So I don't think anyone would say there is one solution to it, but I do think for fans, current students, alums of any era, it's great to, hear there's enthusiasm for it from some of the program's best. So let's just sort of talk about the beginning of this idea to form a team specific collective. Where did this idea necessarily come from? What was sort of the light bulb moment for you, Steve? And just what have some of the initial conversations around the idea been?
So the genesis of this was through Roberto Nelson. Last year, he took it upon himself to start reaching out to alumni, and he had connected with Mark Radford a while back, and he put together some opportunities for us to all come down to like 2 or 3 games, maybe 4 games. So he took it upon himself, and so one day we were driving back from the game. We had this big bus, not a touring bus, whatever you call it. Anyway, so we're all sitting around. So we were talking about the idea of getting engaged with Oregon State again. And there was a lot of talk about not so good experiences from Oregon State. And so I told the guy, I said, look, guys, I said, everyone's going to have to figure out their why. Why do you want to re-engage with Oregon State? And then after you figure out your why, then we need to have a collective why. Of why we want to get engaged with Oregon State. And we have to be prepared to start this journey, alone and get the momentum up. And the reason I say that, because, from my era forward, I believe Roberto Nelson is the first former player that's been involved in the program. So that's not a good thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've struggled, because, your athletes are your ambassadors, So I said, I don't want to talk about the past. I don't want to talk about the bad stuff. Think about if you want to get engaged, we'll get engaged. We need to come up with our collective why. So I knew that someone was going to have to take the lead, and that there's going to need to be a lot of research done, because, you know, different people have their own ideas of how to do this and that. But I knew there was a bigger picture, and, you know, my background and my what I do for a living, I have a research and consulting firm that focuses on minority workforce development. And right now I'm laser focused on the construction industry. So I'm in the workforce development business, particularly for minorities. And so I knew right away what my interests were going to be is this is just workforce development for me. Okay. Mm-hmm. And, you know, one of the things that I have been saying for a long time is that if players take care of business on and off the court, they should be networked for success when they leave Oregon State, you know? So when I started looking at NIL, I did my deep dive. You know, I looked at all the legal cases. I reviewed all the federal legislation. I reviewed state legislation. So I did a lot of research and had a pretty good idea of the landscape on a national level, and then on a local level. And then, you know, as you guys know, this NIL is the wild, wild west right now.
Right.
And it's going to settle down. It's going to settle down eventually. I think the 80-20 rule is going to take over eventually. And that's 80% of the revenue is going to go to 20% of the players. And until they work out a revenue sharing agreement that distributes the TV revenues to the players, you're not going to get parity. You're not going to get an even playing field, and you're going to get donor fatigue. Because all NIL has done is just allow the boosters to come out of the shadows, and now they're the flow below the table, you know, moving money around. But now it's in the open. So right. So that was the genesis, and like I said, I've done the research, and I think I have a roadmap for it. There's a couple of things that I still need to get nailed down before I'll have my final plan and in the direction that we're.
So real quick, Steve, you had mentioned that. Yeah. So you had mentioned that each person had to come to the table with their why, and that was really important. What was your why, and why right now? Oregon State seems like, I mean, this is obviously a pivotal point in Oregon State's history, but, you know, sort of being relegated down to the West Coast Conference, didn't have a great season last year. Why is now the time for you to step in?
Because of the tradition that there's a threat that's going to go away. You know, if the Pac-12 doesn't come back, then all those records and all those things are frozen in time. And if it doesn't come back and we end up in another conference, we have to create a new identity, or that's going to be separate from the Pac-12. So that was important to me. And then this other thing, like I say, as far as workforce development, you know, players, when they come to college, there's 3 types of players, okay? And as a player, you want to make sure that your aspirational goals are aligned with the university's aspirational goals. So if my aspirational goal is to go to the NBA, then, you know, I want to make sure that I've got a program that it starts with the coach, starts with the system. Do I fit in that system? Who are the other players that are around me? What's the history of the school? You know, I need to know all of those things when I get ready to make a decision. So there's 3 different types. There's one that say, you know what, I couldn't jump straight from high school, so I want to do 1 and done or 2 and done. But that's my aspirational goal, okay? There's others that say, yes, I want to make it to the NBA, but I'm also interested in a career, you know, because I know it's not going to last forever, okay? And so I want to pursue other options too. And then there's those that say, you know what, I'm 12, 11, 10 guy on the bench. I'm not going to the NBA. I know that. I'm just happy to be here, be part of this team. And I know I got to start a career, okay? So the question is, okay, what type of player are we going to recruit? to build the program, to rebuild the program. And so when I looked at that, and I looked at NIL too, and I saw that it was pay to play, and they had this Chinese wall between the foundation and the collective, and that came down. But before that, I was looking at ways that the university could give money directly. And one of the things that I saw was that if it's education related, then they can give money to that. Okay. So in my work as workforce development and the construction industry, there's a school over in Northeast Portland called De La Salle North Catholic High School. And they have this incredible program. They have a corporate work study program where they've got about 60 or 70 corporate partners who agree to hire 4 kids starting in 9th grade as paid interns. And the kids are literally driven to work once a week, and their goal is full employment. So when I looked at NIL, right now, like I said, it's the Wild Wild West, so that's the deepest pockets, determines what players get paid, because the players right now don't have a strong enough brand on their own to attract the dollars. So I said, we need something, we need a foundation to the NIL that's not pay to play. And if we can put together a corporate work study program similar to that, where the players, whatever their interests are, if we can find a business out there that be willing to hire them as an intern, so they can learn the industry, they can learn the business, and pay them. I'm like, if we could do that for all the athletes as the base layer of a NIL, and then you add the other NILs on top of that. But with that base layer, we know that we can help them develop, their career pathway, the curriculum, to do, and then, we can help them build their brand through this process. So that was kind of how I ended up where it was in terms of saying, starting a collective. So anyway, so that's how this thing got started, and that's kind of where I've been right now is working on that foundational level that will be more than just pay per play as we ride out this Wild Wild West.
Steve, you mentioned, I believe, in the article about kind of the with Carey Eggers, the different resources on campus, especially through the College of Business and College of Engineering. Do you see that playing into players developing this, business brand? Not that their name is a business, but who they are and what they can bring, to the economy essentially as that business. And then what kind of resources have you discovered on campus that maybe are underutilized by athletes, especially on the men's basketball team, that you think would help them develop the different expertise that would serve them well in the professional world?
So one of the things about this whole NIL and personal brands, this is an attention economy. And just because you played for a team, it's not going to give you any power to your brand. To monetize that, develop relationships, it's not going to happen on its own. And so I see people talking about, they're going to help them develop merch and do all this other stuff. And I'm just like, okay, you just dumped how many thousands and thousands of college players on the market, and they all think that they're going to get NIL and they're all going to market products and build up their brand. It's like, no, it's not going to happen. So what I looked at was, so my background before I got into construction, the industry that I was in blows people's mind because one, my age, where I live, and the industry. So before this, I was in the yachting world, and I had an online travel site that was Yachting Lifestyle 365, and we had 118 destination guides. We wrote about where to go, where to stay, what to pack, what to do, how to get there. And so I was in the publishing business. I was in a digital marketing business. So I really, really do understand content development. I understand direct marketing. I know all these things. And so I know that's what it's going to take to build a brand. So when I looked at Oregon State, so I'm on the dean of the College of Business. I'm on his advisory board. I've been on there for about 10, 15 years. Okay. And so within the College of Business, we have these 3 programs. One, we do have an entrepreneurial school. Okay, you want to be an entrepreneur, learn how to start running your own business. We got that in the College of Business. Okay, you want to develop products. You want to develop your own merch. You want to develop whatever, do that, whatever you want to create. We've got the Damn Lab Makerspace. Is all about product development. Okay, Everybody's excited about AI. Okay, anybody that's followed AI and the ability now to create content, whether it's pictures, now it's video, use it to run your business. So that's the hottest thing out there. What do we have? We have Jesse Long. We have the guy that started NVIDIA, who got $50 million to build a AI center. And that $50 million is going to get magically end up being like a $200 million AI. And I'm like, can we combine those 3 and then build a program for the athlete and say, okay, you know what? We're going to build a marketing campaign for you and content for you that's going to be based around 3 things: what you do on the court, what you're doing with your education and your career advancement, and your lifestyle on campus. And so we're going to build you out a storyline that's going to run year round. Okay, help you develop the content. Work with the College of Business. I'm working on setting up a meeting with Sarah, who heads Beaver Properties, oversees all that, because I want to understand what Oregon State's current reach and engagement is. Tell me, what is our current reach? So we do have these programs that will allow you to build a robust program so that the athletes they'll be networked for success. They'll have a career pathway. They'll have the relationships, and they'll have the tools to build their.
We've talked extensively about Oregon State's partnership with NVIDIA as untapped competitive advantage. So it's interesting that you bring that up, because I totally agree. I'm in that boat as well, of somebody that uses AI regularly for work, can see the power of it, would love to do more to develop, my own brands or businesses. I still use it for a company that I'm employed with instead, and then lots of other, personal hobbies and whatnot. But I do think that that's, something that I don't see other schools doing, and they don't really have that opportunity either. So,
exactly. Yeah.
It's huge.
It's definitely leverage. Yeah.
It is. It is going to be huge. As we start to rebuild our basketball brand, and we've got a bunch of headwinds, but to create really creative content that you can create avatars of all the players for themselves and create content around that, it's just, like I said, I way before the metaverse and stuff, I've been involved in that since 2008. So I already know about the metaverse and all that. And then I know about AI, Midjourney. I know all about it, so I know where it's going. So I know what the potential is. And so that's part of the research and the education I have to do. I have to educate everybody about what the real possibilities are that exist that no one is leveraging right now.
That is amazing to hear.
When you have those conversations about the competitive advantages that exist within Oregon State, specifically with fellow Oregon State men's basketball alums, are you sort of seeing the eyes getting wider and people's enthusiasm for it going, realizing that Oregon State may have advantages in these sort of maybe untapped places that you wouldn't typically have thought of, certainly not 10 years ago, and also that don't typically come up when talking about the solutions for Oregon State men's basketball?
Not yet, because we haven't got to that point. Because like I said, I've gone from 0 to 100 miles an hour in about 3 months. Okay. Right. So I did the deep dive. I know the framework. I've met with most of all the key people. And so the next step is, like I said, there's 2 things we have to get nailed down: the curriculum from the College of Business, the curriculum that will power, the Beyond Basketball piece. So we got to get that figured out, nailed down. And then I have to get an understanding of what the current overall reach and engagement of Oregon State's media properties are, because right now we don't have any eyeballs. We don't know what our TV contract's going to be. And so we really don't have any reach. And so we're going to have to buy reach. We're going to have to create content, and we're going to have to pay to do targeted campaigns to get our story and our message out there. So once I have those two things nailed down, that I will have the complete package and picture together that I can then present to our core guys. And then from there, they'll know clearly what their roles would be and what's expected. So that'll all be in there. So I want to say something too about this whole thing about I'm creating a collective just for basketball. Okay. Mm-hmm. This is a pilot project because there's so many pieces that I envision us having to put together and work on that no one else is doing. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so this is a project. I don't think that I can create a collective just for basketball, just for 13 players. Okay. But right now, the things that I see that need to be done, no one is doing them. 13 is a manageable project. And then if it works, then yes, now you can scale it up to all the other programs. I'm also doing it because the basketball program has such huge headwinds and the rest of the top programs don't have. We all have the issue that the Pac-12 imploded. Okay? We all have the fact that we've lost players in the portal. Basketball, we don't have a rich history right now of winning. We've had some blips, here and there. We've got 2 years to figure out where we're going to be. And so we have to get something going now at scale this year so that next year is full of effect. And so at the end of 2 years, whoever knows about Oregon State, they know whatever players, they know what Oregon State has. So as far as, like I say, everyone, I'm the guy that sees as the Matrix. I see all these dots, and I've got to assemble them and then make them easy where people explain when the light bulb goes off in their head. So that's where I am with just about everybody, and with the players too. They're all excited about the framework, but how it actually comes together and work, they can't wrap their brain around all those different pieces, but I can.
Yeah, I'm guessing a lot of it's because of the precedent set by what NIL is going to look like, right, over the last couple of years. I'm curious, though, Steve, the men's basketball team this offseason essentially became Euroball team and brought in a lot of European players, a lot of great skilled players. I'm really excited to watch play. But there's also the caveat that those players aren't eligible for NIL as it's currently structured. But what I'm hearing, though, is that these programs maybe bypass that in a way and allow maybe an even more competitive advantage to recruit players that aren't eligible to pursue professional careers after basketball is done?
It's part of it. It starts with a curriculum that helps prepare them for life after basketball. And now you can go work and get paid. And maybe the person that owns the company is a big Beaver. You can figure out what their internship is worth, okay? But the program itself, the purpose of the program is to prepare them for beyond basketball. So yes, we're looking into that, and I think that I think we'll be able to deal unless it comes up with. Yes, right now I don't know because I don't know if they didn't need a work visa. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But that's one of the things that we're working on.
Interesting. Cool.
What sort of support and buy-in do you need to see from the university for this to kind of take off within the timeline that you foresee for it? Or does it seem like you already have that buy-in and that support from
it's going to take total buy-in because of the 2-year window. When you talk about building a basketball program and building the right foundation, attracting the right players, okay? Right now you have a 2-year window. You don't have a 4-year horizon for a player that's planning on going to university for 4 years. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing player will take into consideration. I'll come play for you, all the other barriers, but where are you going to be after 2 years? Okay. And what's going to happen to my teammates? Are they going to get recruited away? So, right now there isn't very much clarity on that at all. And there's very little communication, which is critical. I mean, the sooner we come up with a vision for the future that we can start selling, the sooner we get top of mind of people. So instead of them thinking that we're just sitting there in the middle of this implosion, okay? Mm-hmm. We had all these things go off, all this implosion, and we're just kind of sitting there in the ashes. So we have to come up with a compelling vision for the future of our athletic department, of all of our programs, and then we have to then communicate what Oregon State has to offer beyond just the athletics, okay? This is what they have to offer student athletes, and these are the cutting-edge programs that we offer. And you have to have a winning program. You have to have winning basketball and football, okay, to pay the bills, okay? So you have to figure this out.
And I get you mentioned a lot of this starting with Roberto being on staff and reaching out to gentlemen such as yourself and other former players, which is great to hear. We've had Berto on the show before and big fans of him. So just even those small examples of having a former player on staff with some agency of what happens is a great sign. I was struck a little bit in reading the Eggers piece because another former Oregon State basketball player who got there right after you were drafted, Steve Woodside, commented that he wouldn't feel great about the sort of revival of Oregon State men's basketball happening from the former players putting in their resources because the university didn't give them resources, and it wouldn't give him, that pleasure to just sort of like, the alumni swooped in and, saved the day. What kinds of things can the university do to appeal to former players who may have been or may still currently be disengaged after several years of feeling disengaged, as you yourself have mentioned a couple times, having times where you weren't very engaged with?
So I know right now that my recommendation, the two things that we need to focus on is the beyond basketball and alumni engagement. Mm-hmm. Those are the two most important things that we need to focus on because you do need your former players, involved. They need to feel valued. Some people love Deion Sanders. Some people hate Deion Sanders. I think Deion's a god. Okay, so I'm 100% Deion. Where's my glasses? I forgot. I got my blinds. I got my gold ones too. Okay, but one of the things that people were looking and what he did is that he transformed that whole athletic department, the campus, the town. And he opened the door and invited all the alumni back and made them feel welcome. Okay, so that is the area that we really want to focus on. And of course, we want to help raise NIL money, but it's a pretty big lift right now, given all the headwinds. Put the money aside, picking Oregon State for the right reasons, then the money. Okay, so we don't have a lot of the right reasons in place. And now to raise the money, that's going to be a heavy lift, and that's going to follow the foundation. Okay, we'll help. Right. Okay, but the amount of money that we need next year, the number that I heard was $1.5 million for the basketball program, and that's based upon what the current top teams in the WCC are spending. And that makes sense because, you have 1 year for the guys that you brought on this year. And if they pan out the way you think they're going to pan out, then now you're going to give them a raise. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then, if we can compete in the top 5 in the WCC, this upcoming year, then I think that would be a victory, particularly since you're starting with almost a brand new team. So that would be a victory. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then if that happens, to make the next step to be able to compete at the top of the WCC, that means you're going to need money now to keep the ones that develop, but now you got to need the money to bring in the talent to elevate it. That's So the former players, I think our number one priority is to get them back engaged and feel wanted. My workforce development, and I say I focus on minority workforce development, and you hear about DEI and everything, and sometimes it can be confusing. Well, I simplified it, and I just said all it is equal access to opportunities for all, and then equal access to career opportunities for all, and then equal access to education and training to drive your career pathway, and then equal access to authentic relationships that aren't transactional. Okay? Players, athletes, they need people, and workers, they need people in their corner that believe in them and their aspirational goal and say, I'm going to help you reach your aspirational goal. This is not a transaction, okay? As if you're successful, okay, of course you want to give back to the people that help you, okay? So right now, it's tough right now because NIL has made this all transactional. And like I said, we're going to get donor fatigue very quickly around that. And so when it comes to the players, job number one is we have to change the culture on campus, Oregon State, that so that athletes feel that they're valued, beyond the basketball piece. So that's going to be really, really important. So those are the two things, the beyond basketball piece and the alumni engagement is top of list for me.
And Steve, I think you had touched on it earlier about how the players seem bought in on this, or at least they're aware of it. What are just sort of the vibes from the team of what you've explained to them, and just like what's the excitement level with
the
that?
Alumni?
No, the current team. Or has this not been? So
I haven't had a chance to meet any of the players yet, but I am going down this Thursday to observe practice and start to meet the players. I've been in conversation with Coach Tinkle, so I'm starting that process to get to know the players. When I met with Coach Tinkle, I told him his assignment was going to be that he was going to have to come up with that inspiring vision for this program. And he's going to have to explain his system, and he's going to have to explain the roles and where each one of the players fits into those roles. And so, and then in the other assignment, I said, I want a scouting report on all the players. And I don't just want a basketball scouting report. One of the things that I do in my work around workforce development, whether I'm working with the CEO of a company or the workers, all I do, I take them to lunch and I ask them the question. So take me back as far as you can remember. Tell me about your grandfather, your great-grandfather. What do you know of him? What did they do? Where did they live? Okay. Where did your parents grow up? What did they do for a living? Where did you go to high school? When you left high school, did you go straight to work or did you go to college? When did you start your first business? And so when you hear people's story, it gives you a good picture of who they are, what their whys are, and what their aspirational goals are. I want that type of report on all the players because we have to sell the players that we get the fans and everybody behind this program, knowing there's headwinds, but getting behind these programs because we want to be those authentic relationships with these players here. This is not just a transactional relationship. We believe in you. We want to help you achieve your aspirational goal, both on and off the court. So I'm sure as I get to know them and they get to see that what our whole focus is really focused on them and making sure they have the best experience on campus, and then help them develop their brand and then see where the opportunities are, where there's different opportunities of NIL money based on their brand and their.
Steve, you mentioned a bit about the other former players who are excited about potentially becoming involved with this. And I posed a question to you before we actually started recording. Just why is it that it's been so difficult for Oregon State to tap into its rich history, whether it's the players or just the outcomes, the success of the seasons, and continue that momentum or bring that resurgence back, leaning on our rich history And this is that something that could fix this program? But within talking to you now, it does kind of feel like maybe in the past there might have been an opportunity that could have arose, that the team's program's history could have really helped rebuild it, revitalize it. But maybe this is kind of the new age way to do that. Is that how you're feeling about this, with the former player involvement and trying to help shift the view of NIL and shift the mindsets of players so they realize the opportunity that's in front of them, and also use that as like a recruiting play?
So I would tell you from my own experience, I had some negative experiences when I was here at Oregon State, and when I left, I literally had nothing to do with Oregon State for 25 years. I was not engaged at all. And then there's been several times that I've tried to re-engage, and it didn't happen. But Eileen Kleinsorge, who was the dean of the College of Business, she's the one that got me engaged. It took her 3 years to convince me to serve on her advisory board, but she wanted me to come to the College of Business and help get more minorities into the College of Business. Okay. So I joked around with her because I formed this consortium a couple of years ago in the construction industry to do just that. And she's part of my consortium. And I said, it's taken me like 10 or 15 years to finally get around what you asked me to do. So without a doubt, there hasn't been, the former players do not feel valued and wanted. There hasn't been a welcoming back, an invitation to re-engage. I can say for myself, my disengagement was one of the biggest mistakes of my life, because I look back on my life and I look back and whatever success I had, how much more it could have been if I had stayed engaged and if I had separated out the students and the fans from the institution. My issues with the institution, okay? Mm-hmm. And I missed out on building all these great relationships. And just thank God, our team just still carries so much goodwill that when I've gotten back engaged, they've welcomed me back with open arms. But I look at that big gap. But it also highlights the importance for these players, is that, for most of them, this is the only time they're really going to be able to monetize their chosen profession if they want to play in the NBA or, play professional basketball. Some overseas, I looked at the research, and between accounts back in the 60s to now, there's only been 36 players from Oregon State go to the NBA, and a lot of them just had a cup of coffee in the league. So you're not going to make it. But anyway, so for me, it's like I said, that's one of the biggest mistakes of my life, of me disengaging from Oregon State. So that's another one of my why, is to re-engage. Hopefully they can resurrect the Pac-12. Well, actually, if they don't, then my records are intact. But we have to get rid of that 0-18 year, though. So we have to get the Pac-12 fired back up. So we give somebody an opportunity to take that record.
Yeah, or at least go 18-0, and that way, we
share the misery,
balance it out. Yeah. I'm curious though, Steve, just as a follow up to that. At the time, though, when you were disengaged, what were your feelings like towards the university?
It didn't exist. I just, and this is the irony. Okay, here's the irony. The irony was basically around NIL. Okay, so. I had a debate class, and I actually debated this. They were talking about the athletes got a free education, and I did my research, and I'm like, no. Back then they paid out like 600,000 in scholarships, and they brought in 8 million, 9 million, whatever the number was. I'm like, no, I paid for my scholarship. Okay, that's a pretty good return. I said that, I've already been elected. I was selected NBC Player of the Game 4 times. My scholarship's paid for. I said, I should be able. I said, why can't I go down to the store and buy a basketball and have my teammate sign it and auction it off? They can do it, but I can't do it. Okay. I had another incident where there's some tickets for sale for the Ali Holmes fight, and a friend of mine, saw the tickets, we bought them. He had a plane, and we're going to fly down to Vegas for it. But the NCAA got wind of it and said, no, you can't take it because his plane's not available to other students. I said, well, what if we make the decision to take my orange van that gets 13 miles an hour, or his Mercedes that gets 35, 40? Can we take his car? They said no. I said, aren't you discriminating against athletes? Yes, okay. But the thing that really separated me was that one of my teammates had a young daughter, and he was struggling to make ends meet. And so I went out and tried to find some help for him. And there was this guy named Frank Ramsey. He was the big booster back then, Big Cheese. So I went and met him, went to his office, introduced myself, and I said, how come I've never met you? I know you're Big Cheese, you're the big guy here, but, we're like number 3 in the nation, we're rolling, how come I've never met you? His response to me was, I'm a very busy man. I don't have time to hold your hand. I said, okay, wow. Message received, zero distortion. So after that experience, NCAA, I'm just like, I said, you know what? I don't owe them nothing, and I'm done. Okay? But like I said, now I look back on it and I regret it. I regret that decision. But that's just one example. Mm-hmm. And all the former players also have their list of similar experiences. So I said, okay, we can't keep talking about the problem. Okay, we know that happens. Now, are we going to go together forward and make a difference and change the culture, change and rebuild this program with the right foundation? So that's another big part of my why. It's workforce development, but also rebuild the legacy and to be a part of creating the foundation to get us back to where we were.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
In a way, bridging the gap, right? In a way, bridging the gap for players that I've been trying to re-engage and giving them that opportunity to do so.
And to build,
it's very commendable.
And so when they come back on campus, it's not to ask for money from them. It's come back to rebuild relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's so big. When we were Oregon State, it was when Craig Robinson had taken over the program from Jay John, and I remember he had mentioned he wanted to bring the players from the past back and re-engage them into the program. And I remember AC Green walking into Gill. It was for a game that didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but Gill was packed and he received a standing ovation, and like the fans crave that. And I've always been really confused as to why it's been such a swing and a miss every single time that this has come up. So yeah, I mean, all I could say is I appreciate that it's coming from you, because this time seems like it might be a little different. And I think that would be a huge pivotal point in this program's history.
And we really, I really want to help the athletes make sure that their experience, they're a good experience. And like I said, when they leave here, they're prepared to network for success for whatever career path that they choose. And they know that they have this group of people, Beaver Nation, that are going to be interested in them and follow them, what they do. And when they come back, they're going to be welcomed back. That's the type of culture that we want to build, because you have to sell your incoming players, particularly if they're minorities. Why do you want to come to Corvallis?
Right.
If it was me, if it came down to, well, I don't know if I say that, but it'd be tough if it came down to Oregon State and Pepperdine. Wake up in the morning to surf sub. People are driving Lamborghinis and Morales.
Right.
Yeah, especially in like January, February during basketball season too.
Right. Yeah. The WAG cold treks to Gill probably weren't as appealing as strolling the beach at that time.
Wake up in the morning, look like the sun is like surf sub.
Just real quick, Steve, what was your favorite memory at Oregon State, and specifically Gill Coliseum? Because I think a lot of fans, especially the younger fans, don't know what a packed, loud, ruckus Gill is.
Well,
like.
we had this motto: it was sellouts and blowouts. We had our theme song, Celebration. Cool in the Gang Celebration was our theme song. but yeah, going to classes on Tuesday and Monday and Tuesday, and the kids are already camped out on the ramp for a game that's going to happen on Friday. Okay. And, at the time, when you're playing at a high level and you just focus on the moment, you really can't step back to just see how special it is, because you're just, but looking back then, there were, speaking of Pepperdine, one of my favorite stories is, we were ranked number 1, and we were playing Pepperdine, we were behind in the first half, and we were playing like crap. And so, came in the locker room, and Ralph Miller, he turns to us and he says, "Gentlemen, I don't know whose offense you're running. It's not mine." So he said, "The next half, I'm just going to sit back and watch you F up." Started the second half, he sat down, crossed his arms and crossed his legs, and just sat back and just let the play go. And then we came back, and we came back. He called a timeout. We came on the sideline, started to talk. I said, "No, coach." I said, "We got this." And we went on to win. But we had a great game. We had another big game up in Washington. We're ranked number 1 again. We were behind the whole game, and we got a tip with like 7 seconds to go, and won the tip, and I got it and passed it to Lester and sent the game into overtime, and then we ended up winning. So beat UCLA. That was another big milestone. My senior year, when we beat them at Pauley Pavilion, that was the first time we had beat UCLA at Pauley Pavilion since 1957, the year that I was born.
Oh wow!
And then when they took me out the game, when I walked over to the sideline, I turned around to the audience and I pointed doing a kiss my. And Jimmy Anderson said, Steve, we got to come back here. I'm like, I don't.
That's amazing.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's
so
fantastic.
Good.
We for sure have to have you back on to talk, just basketball stories, because that 2 minutes alone was pretty incredible stuff. But Mr. Steve Johnson, you've been incredibly generous with your time and your insight, yes. And I think we are completely bought in and convinced and appreciative of this effort. So if there's anything that we can do to just shed some more light on the efforts, if there's ever anything the fans can do, Beaver fans are always eager to figure out how they can help. No one really wants to sit back and just listen and wait to see what happens and with this realignment stuff. But thank you so much for all the effort you've put in to better the program. Thank you again for taking almost an hour with us tonight. We really appreciate your time, sir. For sure. Thank you so much.
Steve. Anytime.
Yeah. Have a great night.
Steve, it was great. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Have a great night.
He's awesome. And he is exactly what we need right now. He's exactly what the basketball program.
Exactly.
The fact that he putting the pieces together of, we have NVIDIA.
Yeah, we have this, and this, and we can do that, and that.
Well, the fact that he was focusing on the AI component and how NVIDIA can help without having the direct funding from Jensen, I think is so key. It's right. So, and you have to be, think outside the box on what to leverage if you're Oregon State, especially the basketball program right now. And that's exactly what he's doing. And he definitely has the skill set to figure out, what that sort of outside the box thinking is.
Yeah.
That was awesome to hear.
And a fresh perspective too, that's going to take, you can't just throw money at stuff and try and get money from high priced alumni to, try and rebuild a culture that way. Cause I think that's maybe what some of the previous efforts have been focused on. And that's where it's, fallen flat in the past. So,
right. Yeah. I mean, people want, to just, put the money where your mouth is in a way. And but in the inverse for the programs where it's like, all right, you want us to be involved, show us why. Like, why?
Exactly.
Show us that you really want us to. Show us how you think we can help. And I'm assuming we just never were able to do that. And I think in a roundabout way, he did address the question that we posed to Nick Daschle when we had Daschle on a few weeks ago, months ago, whatever it was now, about how do you fix the men's basketball team. And I think that the key to it is to just think outside the box. And I do think that there's buy-in, at least from the staff, to approach current landscape of college athletics that way. And it sounds like there's obviously buy-in from Steve Johnson as well, and other former players and stakeholders in the industry. And so, yeah, this is actually, I think, pretty exciting. Like, if everyone else is zigging, let's zag. Why not?
Well, and one, I think more so than the AI component and NVIDIA and Jensen that stuck out to me was trying to find, I don't want to say a loophole, but just navigating the rules. And I mean, Steve is a student of NIL, it seems like he has done his research, right? And to sort of navigate into a way where we would be able to supplement something for international players that are just sort of written out. And I think a lot of schools look at that and they go, okay, well, they're written out of NIL, so we'll just pass. And Steve's trying to find, well, is there a way that we could entice them to come? Maybe not by traditional NIL ways, but is there another way that we can do this? And man, if he can figure that out and capitalize on that really could be a huge turning point for Oregon State men's basketball.
Right. And I think
especially if we already are putting a stronghold in Europe, right? Like, I mean, clearly Tinkle has been recruiting very well out of Europe.
Yep.
And a challenge for
coaching and culture part
everywhere is this finding the way to make NIL work for you. And he outlined like 3 pretty unique and strong advantages that Oregon State can capitalize on in the way athletes are treated on campus, marketed as a player, as a student, and as a person, and how that can create opportunities. So if I'm a 1 to 5-star 17-year-old, like I perk up a little bit during that conversation. So let's send this episode to every high school recruit in the world.
Well, they'll find our episode clips on TikTok, I'm sure.
Exactly. That's why that's the real reason we're moving over to TikTok. Get these young hoopers onto campus, because the surf at Pepperdine is a little tempting. So we got to make up for it.
I get it. Yeah.
JP roadmap question: should we just have that be the beginning of the episode and we push forward? I'm glad you said that, because that makes it a lot easier. How the hell are you guys? You know what? Exactly. Then we need to treat wasn't it awesome when we talked to Steve Johnson 10 minutes ago?
This is the intro, Terry.
Oh, this is the intro.
Yeah. But it's an hour into the episode. What a wrench.
Is this where the bum bum?
Yes.
Bum bum. In the 57th minute. Yeah, just like a super sub at the World Cup. Here it comes.
That's right.
We haven't talked Oregon State men's basketball in a while, so I was very happy that
felt good.
We reached out to Steve, and he was enthusiastic.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson,
meeting with us. A great article by State of Oregon sports writing legend Carey Eggers that was published on his website on July 22nd. If you haven't gone and read that, we'll post that link out, as well as that provides some additional context. And also, it also talks about Steve Johnson's path to Oregon State, which we won't dive into here, but it's pretty fascinating. The dude has a pretty fascinating life, and Texas. It got down between Oregon State and Texas for his college choice. Texas offered him money and a car, and Ralph Miller offered him a system that essentially guaranteed him a spot in the NBA as a first-round draft pick. And I think he chose pretty well. I'm grateful that he made the right decision.
Yeah.
So it does come down to the basketball standpoint of it. That's, in the assignment for Tinkle. And I'm glad he brought that up too. But it's we're not just doing nothing here. Like, there are really smart, really talented people like Steve at work to try and make Oregon State men's basketball a renowned program once again. So,
and can I just say, like, at least to us three here on the Belligerent Beavs, we were so enamored with what Steve had to say. He played for all three of our favorite NBA teams, exactly. And we didn't even get a chance to ask him a question on that.
We didn't get a chance to ask him a question on that. He played for mine and JP's team, like, very briefly and at the end. So I'm not sure.
I think he played for 4 games for the Wolves and then like 20 games for the Dubs.
Hey,
obviously,
man,
he had a very successful stint with Portland, but he also was, but he also was teammates with rookie Michael Jordan.
He was teammates with rookie Michael. That's why I say we gotta have just like a basketball specific episode, because there's the 2 great stories he snuck in at the end there were fantastic, and that's not even scratching the surface. So, Mr. Johnson, we've got to have you back on the show again someday. I like starting the show with a near hour-long, very insightful, very intelligent interview. Look at us, you guys, doing the thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Steve's making us
look good, but that's all right.
Yeah.
When you have a basketball player as talented as Steve Johnson on the floor, you just pass him the ball.
Pass him the ball, man.
Yeah. Great addition, you guys. But hey,
let him fear the hook, and then he goes for the layup. That's what he's doing. That is what he's doing with this NIL idea.
Dude, that's not a bad analogy.
Yeah.
That is not a bad analogy.
Right. Yeah. What's new with you guys? Hi.
Hey, Terry.
We can sneak in a little bit of nonsense. Let's do like 2 to 3 minutes of nonsense and a quick beer segment. I love how we talked about Steve Johnson's like plan very carefully, very eloquently, and that Steve, of course, we're eloquent too occasionally. And now, the rest of the meat of this episode will be just smoke and mirrors, Big 12 nonsense that was only posted on Twitter. So the exact opposite. We got other stuff. We're not only talking about that. So we've got, there's more Olympic excellence to talk about. And
there is.
I believe our favorite Aussie, Travis Bazzana, is already crushing his early professional career in the minors.
Yeah.
But it is great to see you all here. Benny, thank you for dressing formally and floral.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
Well, look at this. Formal.
Dude,
formal
your tattoo looks awesome
Benny.
in that shirt.
Is that why you wore it?
I gotta blend it in. Blend it in. It's like
it kind of
does. As white as your skin is and the white that shirt is.
You look cool as shit right now.
Thanks, man.
You just need to bleach your hair.
I was thinking about that the other day.
I'll bleach your hair. You should just come down to my house. I'll bleach your hair.
All right. Do it before the Idaho State game.
I won't be.
Oh wait, you're not.
Yeah, JP's not around. That's the one game JP's not around for.
Yeah,
do it before the Purdue game, because I don't want my hair to be yellow right before the Oregon game.
Well, if you dye yellow, then it's a lot easier to like spray it orange. It looks more.
Or
like temporary dye.
Do a Catan.
Do
it. Yeah. Okay.
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah. We should all have Catan Ladapo hair.
Yeah.
For the
you do it too, Terry.
No, he did call it Cheesehead when he posted a picture of a couple weeks ago when they reported a camp or something, and it was like I zoomed in on his.
Did he have orange
yellow hair?
It's yellow. No, we're not.
God.
We're not talking about it.
I'm sorry, Terry. What beer are you drinking?
I'm drinking a Juicy Pear Wild State. So not a beer, a cider from Wild State.
I had to
Cidery,
look closely on that one,
which is in Duluth, Minnesota. The font's not super readable, but
a prickly pear.
Juicy Pear. I did think this cider was called Prickly Pear for a while. I didn't say Prickly Pear, but there is.
Are you sure? What does Benny have?
Benny, do you have something? He doesn't have his headphones in, so he can't hear you.
Oh, go ahead. I have them in now.
JP said, Benny, what do you have?
Oh,
the dog's running after you.
I'm glad you asked. Well, yeah, that's because I have beef jerky.
That's not your vice.
That's a euphemism.
No, it's not tonight. I have so this is what I'm drinking right now. It's Trader Joe's sparkling coconut water, but yuzu flavored. It's random, but it's so good. So shout out to Trader Joe's. If you're ever there, get that. But this is also what I'm drinking.
Squirt.
Zero
Squirt,
sugar.
zero sugar. You guys are officially old. What would the squirt?
It's 8:00 at night. We can't have sugar.
What would a zero sugar
so
squirt vid look like?
Like
Would you just be like doing your taxes and like taking a refreshment break?
And then he would do that. He'd look at the camera and go,
We should do a squirt 15 years later. Well, wait.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it would be 15 years later.
yeah, almost. In like 2 years. Yeah.
Really?
Anniversary squirt vids.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You could use Terry's wedding as the venue to do.
Oh my God.
Yeah. We can crash it like we did that summer at another wedding.
Yeah.
You guys crashed a wedding?
We'll just call it squirting on the altar.
Was I there?
And we won't tell Terry what the actual plot of it is. You'll just know it's called squirting on the altar.
Yes.
With the bride's parents.
I've already asked you guys to be groomsmen, but you are officially uninvited from my wedding. Damn it. There's no way to prevent this. Just gotta lean into it. Whose wedding did you crash that summer?
I tried to look this up the other day, not the other day, but like a month ago, and I honestly don't remember their name.
What Funky
But,
Palm?
No. They got married at the MU.
Yeah.
And then they
and
then they had their reception in the quad. And we caught wind of it. And actually, AC Green was their officiant.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But we weren't there for the ceremony. We were not that mean.
Okay.
We just went for the free McMinimans beer they had in the quad. But we dressed up real fancy, groomed our mustaches real nice.
Yeah. Oh, mustaches were looking good.
Yeah, and just jostled on into the MU quad and ended up having multiple conversations with very prominent guests, including the father of the bride.
A long conversation with the father of the bride.
Did you guys give a toast like Vince Young and Owen Wilson do in the opening montage of Wedding Crashers? Not only crash a wedding, but give a toast at it?
No, we tried our best to lay as low as possible. And that's when the father of the bride came up to us, I was like, he's going to say, get the hell out of here. Who are you?
Yeah.
And instead he was like, how do you guys know the bride and groom? And then we were like, I had a backstory. I won't expose who they were too much because I don't want to get in any trouble in case they're a listener now. But I
think the statute of limitations on crashing a wedding in the MU quad 15 years ago have probably expired. I think you're fine.
I think there's probably only one wedding in the summer of 2011. Anyways, we had a nice backstory, and it did align very well. We did our research. This was early days of the internet, and we formed a very solid backstory that even the father of the bride didn't question it. I wouldn't say he believed it. He probably was like, I don't care, but he didn't question it, and he didn't kick us out. And then he told us all about his professional past and the family, and then we went with the whole group of after party goers. We walked all the way down to, actually, did we get in somebody's car? Either way, we ended up at the Peacock,
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. That's right.
So we went with the wedding after partiers to the Peacock, including the bride and groom. And that's where we had too many dollar PBRs, exposed ourselves as frauds.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We turned into Chatty Cathy's.
Yeah. Nice shiny shoes and button-up shirts and belt buckles and mustaches. Mm-hmm. And then we told everybody what happened, and you could hear pin drop and the sound of the stools at the top of the cock scraping on the floor as everyone evacuated around us and walked away and went home and just left Benny and I at the bar height table by ourselves in dress-up clothes.
That's
in the summer with no one else there.
Yeah,
I think that's an unreasonable reaction on their part, in my option. Like,
well, thank you.
I would have got it if one person was upset, but there was like
two random people are also here, so like the night's over. Do you think they annulled the marriage after that? Did you guys cause the collapse of their love story? You ruined their special day.
No, but then I think is when we decided. Soon after is when we decided the squirt videos. So I think the squirt videos came second to the wedding. But we were on a high, baby. We were like creative geniuses, just absolute creative geniuses by that point.
Yeah, if we were doing squirt videos, we would have absolutely done a squirt video at that wedding. No doubt about it.
Just like at your wedding, there, he's squirting on the altar.
Squirting on the altar.
And you'll have the same where everyone at the wedding will just leave, and then it'll just be you and Benny at the venue on a date, basically.
At the altar.
JP, please play 5 seconds of Let's Get Married by Jagged Edge. Specifically the part, meet me at the altar in your white dress and a bottle of squirt, I believe the lyrics are. Yeah. Oh, what a way to ruin my wedding. I'm on a roll here. You guys did make it. I won't tell this whole story, but the only time I ever crashed a wedding was a very impromptu wedding crash. So I was wearing a Minneapolis Lakers t-shirt and jeans. So no chance. So I made it 5 minutes with the 2 random people I met that night who I decided to crash this wedding with, and then was promptly and appropriately asked to leave by the best man. But the 3 of us did get to dance start to finish to I Want to Dance with Somebody by Whitney Houston. JP, please play 5 seconds of I Want to Dance with Somebody by Whitney.
Not a bad song.
Where is that, Janet? Fuck, why am I blanking on this right now? Whatever. I Want to Dance with Somebody.
No.
It's Whitney.
Denied.
No, you can't deny it.
First denial.
It's Whitney. It's Whitney.
Denied.
It's Whitney. No, JP's denied before. So
I have denied before.
Anyway, JP, what do you and do this?
I was gonna open this one, but I guess I'll. I didn't really open. Okay, I'll have this one. This is a 5-window beer company juiced IPA, and I'm getting ready for the Niners. Preseason opener Saturday evening, and it is. Look at this. Made for the Bay IPA. Ooh. And it's actually, this is, I don't know why it's signed by this player, but either way, Eric Wright, the defensive back for the early, I guess, all 80s successful 49ers teams, has his autograph on it somehow, but it's like, superimposed. It's not his real autograph. But what's funny is I went to high school with Eric Wright's son. We were in the same class.
No way.
And Eric Wright's son, if I'm putting all the dots together correctly, which I don't know if I am, but I'm pretty sure I am, was hanging out with my younger sister this weekend at a bachelorette party. So he was friends with the older sister of the bachelorette, and then he went to the bachelor party. Anyways, and he lives in Portland now.
Oh, no way.
Eric Wright's son. So yeah, I didn't notice that this was on the can until I pulled it out of the fridge, and then now it feels like the universe is telling me to drink it. So I'm going to drink it.
Oh, yeah.
First sip that I've had.
Shout out Eric Wright.
Yeah.
How is it?
It's okay.
Well, I just got to the bottom of mine, so I have to go get another one before we can toast. You guys talk for 20 seconds before.
Okay. Well, I think the thing with this one is it's a hazy.
Oh.
And it's kind of piney. Whereas the other beer I was having was just a very standard, like, West Coast IPA. So it was very malty. So this one tastes different.
I never considered myself somebody who was like an aficionado of wine or beer or anything like that. And so like when people talk about like, oh, you can taste nodes of whatever in this wine, I never understood that. But you've said a couple of things about IPAs where I'm like, it totally tastes like that, like pine.
Yeah.
Absolutely. IPAs taste like pine.
Sticky, icky as well. It sometimes tastes a little danky.
Yeah.
A little stanky danky.
Stanky danky. Yeah.
Yeah. That should be a beer name. If that's not a beer name, don't steal it. That's ours.
Yeah.
Your headphones are loud. I can hear me.
Oh, I'm
sorry.
I can hear me
little
too.
Little stanky danky
IPA.
Little stanky danky
Block
IPA.
15, we're right here. You can sponsor the pod.
We've been right here for 152 episodes.
Yeah. We'll sponsor the pod. We'll name a beer. We'll do a big old thing around it. Hell, we'll even partner. We'll bring Steve Johnson's NIL Collective in the fold. Why not?
Oh,
Let's
this is like a full circle episode.
Let's get some basketball players doing some entrepreneur apprenticeship and learning how to brew their own beer,
the craft beer,
and brand and name their own beer. Yeah.
Oh man,
goes in hand with Oregon State's
Steve,
history.
We're right here. We'll help with all the ideas. Let's
connecting the dots, man. That's what Oregon State's all about. Is connecting the dots here.
Yep. Connecting all the dots. Well,
I was so good at dot to dot.
Let's raise our
as an adult
stand-ins for little stanky danky IPA, and cheers to the Orange Express and Steve Johnson, and to Oregon State men's basketball and beyond.
Yes,
man, I really, really, really wish that some of the younger Oregon State fans, and I know some of them have like seen highlights of when Steve Johnson was playing at Oregon State or Gary Payton was playing at Oregon State, but when Gil is packed and Gil is rocking, it just happens so irregularly now, but it is amazing. Well,
the fact that it was like every home game was that for the Orange Express. And I think that is maybe part of like why fans, at least for me personally, like when Gil was close to being full to the gills, I kind of felt like, oh, this is a special moment, right? Like, look at this. Gil is jam-packed. I'm going to embrace this. I'm going to like really let myself be fully immersed in this situation.
Yeah.
But it almost was like in your head, you're like, well, good thing this is a rarity experience because it makes it feel extra special, right? Like in the moment, you're like, this is so rare. And I feel special because it's so rare. But I think what we all don't realize is that when every home game's like that, it is special every time.
Yeah.
Because you feel like the fans are truly a part of that home court advantage and not just the travel.
Right.
Well, and I hate to say it, and this only rings true for men's basketball, but even during that Elite Eight run, like that wasn't a tournament team. Just they weren't getting an at-large bid. I'll put it that way.
No, it was also COVID.
Right. Well,
it was 2021, so they weren't getting crowds. They couldn't have crowds, like all the restrictions.
Good point. Good point. So, but the point that I was going to make is that like there hasn't been an important game at Gil in so long. Important meaning like there's something on the line, or like there's a chance that they'll make the NCAA tournament if they win this game. Like there just hasn't been one in so long. Like you almost forget what it feels like.
Yeah, and not to mention,
as you mentioned.
Yeah. But I think we all held out hope or had high hopes that after that Elite Eight run, as soon as fans get back into Gil, we'd start to see that historical Gil presence of Beaver Nation. And it did start early a little bit to come back. But I think everyone sensed there was a off vibe about that season. When the losses started to mount early, it was like something's up. And it's not just like a regression. Like it's like there's like no leadership and people are clearly not happy with each other as teammates, you know? So
Speaking of something's up.
Something is
God, you're so good at segues, Terry.
Something's up on college football Twitter.
Who's the CEO of Segway who rode his off a cliff on accident? But that's you, Terry. You are the CEO of Segways.
Don't rag this Segway off the cliff, Terry.
That's the only way for me to go out is riding a figurative Segway off a literal cliff. If anyone can find a way to do it, it'll be me. In case you are not aware, there is a Twitter account by the handle of HVER3. I always read this as MHaver3. People are calling him MHVer, MHVer3, whatever. Here's what he says about himself. Not a member of the media or paid for by any consulting firm. Just a guy with connections that shares what he hears. We can appreciate that. I think all of us would describe ourselves as just a guy with insert whatever we have here, this podcast, sharing our nonsense and spreading love with the world. Recently, he's been sharing a lot of thoughts and potential scoops on the Pac-2 joining the Big 12 conference. The reactions to this have been far and wide, gone up and down. For a little bit of a timeline. So I'll say, let's look at the drafts here. It was probably July 31st is drafts. When all of these, on July 31st is when sort of this first thread of the Pac-2 to the Big 12.
Well, those aren't drafts.
I didn't say drafts. Did I say drafts?
Yeah.
But when the waves of these most recent waves started, about basically right after we finished our last episode.
Yeah,
and
it was.
Benny was like, "Are we on standby for an emergency episode?" And it was like, well, maybe. Not quite a week.
I mean, we're always on standby.
We're always on standby.
We are always on standby.
Always on standby. Always here. That there was majority approval for the Big 12 simply adding the Pac-2, and that there are there's currently 16 members of the Big 12. 11 of the schools in favor of currently adding the Pac-2, and 5 schools not in favor, but none of those 5 being hard nose or whatever. So then a lot of conjecture, great word, was added to this about the how and why of adding the Pac-2 to the Big 12, and also a lot of talk around the ugly L word, which stands for litigation. And some people were assuming that the Pac-2 has something on ESPN, the Big 12's current TV deal partner, and that ESPN was pressuring the Big 12 to now add the Pac-2 to their conference, when a year ago it felt like the opposite was the case, and that maybe ESPN was afraid of going into any kind of lawsuit where Discovery would be involved. Within a day or so, John Canzano wrote a piece where he reached out to high-ranking OSU officers who said this was the usual smoke. HVer continued to share things that involved West Virginia, where he is from, and also one of the 5 dissenting votes offering a counter proposal. Right now, fast forward to today, which is Monday night, August 5th, when we were having this conversation. The Pac-2 has not been added to the Big 12. He is posting that talks to have the Pac-2 have a scheduling alliance similar to the alliance they have with the Mountain West this season is in the works for next season, and would be part of an evaluation period for the conference to see if Oregon State and Washington State are indeed a fit culturally and competitively with the Big 12. This is just the latest bunch of information and idea sharing. None of these sources have really been named. Just a lot of information and a lot of ideas going back and forth. We don't know that it's something. We also don't know that it's nothing. So what are the fans left to do? Sit here, chew on it, go on Twitter Spaces, and share different conspiracy theories. But what I am happy to see here, that this Pac-2 to the Big 12 timeline happening potentially over the next 2 years doesn't sound like such a sick, twisted conspiracy theory after all. And I have not been assassinated yet. I'm not even wearing a tinfoil hat anymore. I'm just saying it continues to make sense.
You even took the bulletproof vest off.
I even took the bulletproof vest off. I'm just saying it continues to make sense, and it would also make sense for a bunch of information to be posted publicly that's saying, oh yeah, we have to do this, this, and this, and bury this in bureaucracy and red tape for 2 years before we can add the Pac-2 and all the assets that come with it to the Big 12. So I ask you two, JP and Benny. Benny, I'm going to start with you. JP, I know you're chomping at the bit as well, but Benny was easily the most excited over all of this. And I don't know if you dove into any other online rabbit holes or put on your own tinfoil hat, as we all have when you're not wearing it now. But you feel free to put it on if you'd like to. Just now that the dust has not settled at all, I don't know why I started to even use that expression. But now that we've gotten to sleep on these thoughts a little bit and know that there will still be quite a bit of time before there's any kind of resolution to whatever the hell is going to happen. But what are you just pleased to hear that people outside the Pac-2 communities and universe are talking about Pac-2 to Big 12? Just what's on your mind and what's your read on this?
Yeah, so I think, well, one thing that sort of humbled me a little bit was how many people came out after MH Ver had announced this or had come out with this story. And the common theme was, why does it make sense right now, right? And so the argument with that was, Oregon State and Washington State, if they're not having a good faith effort to rebuild the Pac-12, then that money would most likely get distributed. The Pac-12 war chest, that is, would probably get distributed amongst the other 10 team, the traitorous 10 that left. And people just saying it doesn't make sense at all, the timing of it. I would argue that it does make sense because of the litigation. And if you go back to when all of this was breaking, I believe it was either Utah or Colorado where the agreement leaked. And
Utah, I believe.
And it was where it was pretty evident that ESPN had reached out to Utah. Because
that was Colorado. Colorado had like a signing bonus.
Right. But there was also written into the contract where it was like, I hereby state that ESPN did not reach out to us and we reached out to the Big 12 or something of that nature. But it was worded in a way where it was fairly obvious that the school was approached by the Big 12 and ESPN. So I think that there is grounds for a lawsuit because that is absolutely violating the contract that they had. It was either the media contract or the contract that they had within the conference, the Pac-12. And so, the other thing is that there were rumors that one of the Four Corner schools, had given information to Washington State that they shouldn't have, or that was sort of confidential internal
the day
Big
that
12.
The Pac-12 officially ceased to exist as it previously.
Right. And Utah has made a big stink about having to join the Big 12. So all of that sort of lines up, right? Like I could see Utah begrudgingly being like, hey, Washington State, you want to get into the Big 12? Here's a document that might help you, right?
Fuck these guys. Let's take over.
Oh, did that say embargo? Oh, shit. I didn't read that.
Yeah.
I thought it said Argo, like the Ben Affleck movie. My bad.
And so,
it's a good movie.
So if you're ESPN, right? ESPN has gotten a lot of really bad publicity. ESPN and Fox have both gotten a lot of pushback on essentially ruining college football to a certain degree. And so just from an optics standpoint, I don't even think that ESPN would be worried that Oregon State and Washington State would necessarily win the lawsuit. No. I think the worry is what would come out in that lawsuit.
Right.
Yeah. And so I could see where ESPN would be like, hey, Brett, you better get this shit figured out. Like, get them in so they will drop this. Like, that all makes sense to me.
Right. You can see how you can connect the dots, as it were. Like how it could become B, it could become C in that situation.
Yeah, right. And so, but then when you have Canzano and Wilner coming out and saying, well, we reached out to the officials of Oregon State and Washington State. Number one,
that's when it
was pointed out to me very clearly by a lot of people on Twitter that Canzano and Wilner have been wrong and very wrong about this whole realignment thing.
And have they been intentionally wrong, or are they intentionally wrong here? As I mentioned a few weeks ago, that having things out there saying Oregon State and Washington State says this is a whole lot of nothing protects Oregon State and Washington State's claim that they are currently just trying to rebuild the Pac-12 with their war chest, with their network infrastructure and stuff, because that is
you
also
think that
a
someone's
part
going
of
to
this.
tell a reporter like, we're vying for the Big 12, we're vying for the ACC, we're going to get in, here's what's going to happen, these are the dominoes that are going to fall, and here's how it'll all end up once the dust settles? Like, hell no, they're not going to even say that, even if there was no war chest.
Well,
100%.
And that's
why
what they
would
told
Canzano
me
reach
in a dream.
But why would Canzano
from my dream.
Why would Canzano even report that? Because
I get why he did.
He would have to know, right?
He reached out.
He understands the context.
Well, and also be very careful to these exact words that are used here, where Canzano, this is happening on Twitter. It gets to a point where enough people are talking about it for a person like Canzano, whose reporting I generally trust, even in this.
Yeah, me too.
Canzano's not saying Oregon State to the Big 12 is never going to happen. He's saying it's in quotes is usual smoke. Yeah. Usual smoke is not a no from an athletic department official. That's just the usual smoke. Like the usual smoke has been swirling around. Yeah. So that's like saying, hey, Benny, we probably don't need to get ready for an emergency episode anytime soon, but it's not a flat out denial. And also I just want it to be clear that because a lot of people are being like, and we don't really need to have this debate here because we'd have endless time to work it out. But now
we always say that and then never go back to the debate. We should do it here.
Well, Beaver fans are okay. Beaver fans are saying like
sports debate central of all of
we
sports.
We do have the arrangement of First Take on here since we switched to my favorite SoundCloud rapper, Riverside FM. But like there's this debate going on, like how many assets are too much assets to give up to get into the Big 12. And
if you had assets for days, what would you do with it?
I'm kind of like, I don't care as long as it's like if it has to be reduced share media rights deal. Great one, JP. Sorry for walking past that. But
thanks.
The whole point of having assets is to get into a Power 4 conference with stability. That invite from the Big 10 is impossible, and that invite from the SEC is even more impossible. So the Big 12 is the next choice. Unless anything short of like financially hamstringing us for several years, I don't really care what Oregon State would give up in a hypothetical situation to get into the Big 12. But what I think the forest through the trees here is the language and intentionality Oregon State and Washington State are showing to the public, because I think there is a way that they can get in that 2-year cycle while retaining most of the assets. They probably bequeath most of the network infrastructure to the Big 12, which has always wanted its own television network, and now would just have the bones from the Pac-12 network, which would be a huge cost-saving venture for them to start one.
But it has to be in partnership with ESPN, because
I know it would be under the ESPN umbrella, and that's like fairly easy to do.
They wouldn't want to just follow in Larry Scott's footsteps of being undercutting the networks for your own network. And saying, we'll do it ourselves.
I'm saying they have the things like studio space and production trucks and things like that. So I think that is what's important here. And then also there's a lot of different like language things they can do. Like if the Big 12 were to absorb the Pac-2, is that enough of a reverse merger that it technically counts as also saving the Pac-12 and rebuilding the Pac-12? Say it's, a evaluation period and the Pac-12 is absorbed by the Big 12 over a couple years times. Maybe Teresa Gould gets an executive position within the Big 12 conference to make it an official merger or something of that nature. There's all kinds of litigation that you can put into something like that to make it, make sure it takes the proper amount of time. That's ultimately what I was saying, Benny. This debate that we have $255 million or whatever the exact number is. Don't spend more than $2 million of that. I don't think that necessarily matters in the long run. I think you do what you do to get into this conference because that is your best lifeline.
So I was going back and forth with a couple people on Twitter about this, and my standpoint was like, you have to take the bad deal. If it's a bad deal, you have to take it, because this isn't like the thing that I pointed out was SMU back in the Southwest Conference, which isn't apples to apples. No. I understand that.
It's relevant, though.
The point, it is relevant because SMU got left behind because their program essentially got decimated from the death penalty that they received from getting caught paying their players, right? But what that resulted in was them going to a Group of 5 conference. And then you see all these other schools going to create the Big 8, which became the Big 12, and them succeeding. SMU was left behind. And that will happen to Oregon State to an even greater level than what happened to SMU because the Group of 5 had a chance. You saw Boise State be able to get to the Fiesta Bowl, right? Like the Group of 5 had a chance. The Group of 5 is going to be in a different, like it's going to be a separate entity at some point. It's going to just be so different. So if you have to take a couple years of getting even no revenue stream from the media deal of the Big 12, like you have to do it. You have to get into the Big 12.
SMU being a private school too also was protective in that situation. There are some advantages to being a public school, but not afforded to Oregon State at this time.
Right. But the point being is like you have to get into the Big 12 because the ACC is going to fall apart too. And if that happens, like that's where I almost hope that Oregon State and Washington State are making these backdoor, having these backdoor handshakes because once the ACC falls apart, the Big 12 has made no secret that they want to expand east. They want to get Florida State and Clemson. They're also going to be looking the quote unquote leftovers, but those leftovers are schools that have a lot of value. And so if that happens and it's a free for all, Oregon State and Washington State are most likely going of left behind.
Well, it's a game of Plinko at that point. Who falls where?
Right.
Yeah. It is. And I think
there's a lot of teams that will be left out high and dry that are on par or even below us, but based upon geography and any sort of
and the litigation.
Bias.
And the litigation. Like the litigation.
They may leapfrog us if there is a crowded room.
Yes, 100%. And that's where I say, like, you have to use the leverage and you have to use it now. And if that leverage is pressing ESPN into a potential lawsuit where shit's going to come out that they don't want to come out, like you have to do that.
Right.
You have to play that card.
And you can offer TV network infrastructure and Pacific time window for Pac-12 after dark, West Coast after dark, which I don't care what any idiot says on Twitter, has always been a valuable broadcast slot. And
absolutely.
One that even when ESPN
there's very little to no other valuable inventory.
Walking away from Oregon State and Washington State, we're always public about that time slot. And if you keep walking east, as I know the Big 12 wants to expand east as well, if you just keep going east on a nice little ayahuasca walk, thinking about these things, you end up west, back where you belong, back home. So Oregon State does have chips. It's not just like they have to, back their way in with some unethical thing. Like there is the people who say Oregon State has zero value, or Oregon State, Washington State bring zero value to the Big 12, just aren't paying attention and also don't understand how time zones work and also how TV ratings work. Because
I hate to interrupt, but
go for it.
I need to interrupt because here's what I need to say. Truly agree that the smoke we are seeing is likely the direction that things will go. I think what will happen will be that the Pac-2 will have a scheduling alliance with the Big 12. I think the Big 12 is or has been exploring what kind of relationship they will have with the Pac-2 next year and beyond, whether that's a partial membership across specific sports, whether it's a full membership, what kind of share they will have. I'm sure that ESPN had been either blatantly ignoring the idea of adding the Pac-2 to the Big 12 until something came up at some point close to the end of the tenure of the Freshers 10 leaving the Pac officially. But there's something that tells me that most of this stuff has gotten worked out well before MH3 tweets about it, well before. Like, I feel like this is, it feels like there's idiots running these conferences and these networks, but I promise you things don't leak the minute they happen.
No.
Yeah.
Unless it's about to be finalized. Most of this stuff has been in motion for weeks, if not months.
And
one thing to point out that's in one thing to point out though that's about things being in motion in months, and Terry, you alluded to this, and I've been thinking about this for a while, and I've never brought it up, but if there is some sort of absorption, merger, whatever, to get out of having to worry about paying back the war chest to 10 defectors, and you have to hire somebody at the conference of especially the commissioner of the Pac-2 to make it look as such, Teresa Gould is an Iowa State alum.
And we love Iowa State on this podcast.
She has Big 12 roots.
Mm-hmm.
So it would not surprise me if she was elevated from the deputy commissioner to this position
with the intention
knowing that this was not the hope, but the actual intention of this is the way to go if we need to make, because we're talking about this now. There's no way that we didn't have talks with the Big 12 last year about a scheduling.
It's public record that we were on the phone with the Big 12 even before the meeting where Washington and Oregon said, actually, we're going to the Big 10 too. We had talked, like, the Husky fans I know were just like, see, you guys were also trying to do some similar shit. I'm like, we're more trying to get a lifeline in case you guys did this shiesty shit we knew you were going to do. Because don't forget, Oregon and Washington reached out to the Big 10 on June 30th, 2022, hours after USC and UCLA announced that they're going to the Big 10 on June 30th, 2022, and said, please, over and over again.
Yeah.
So
that's the you up text a month after you asked if you up, and no one wrote you back.
In one of the several, I think it was the Pac-12 lawsuit. Part of the discovery was like, Murphy was on the phone with Yormark. I don't know if he was evil Bob Yorkmeyer at that time in the day, or when he goes back and forth between those alter egos. But so that could also mean nothing. But the conversations have happened.
One thing that I think, the more I think about it, I think it does mean something, is that it became so public so quickly that the relationship between Oregon State and Washington State and the Mountain West had soured. And that seemed like a really weird
of that
thing
when it came out. Because it was it felt like, this buddy for a while. And then all of a sudden it was like, no, actually they got mad trying to work this thing out.
Yeah, right. And so what does that, that's just building to the narrative of the path to rebuilding the Pac-12 is just, it's nearly impossible. Right. And it is nearly impossible because if you're a team that's in a conference that's stable right now, why would you jump ship and join a conference that has two members and is with those two members very publicly wanting to leave for the Big 12?
Sure.
I think that the nail in the coffin was the voting about CFP. That was it. That was the end of a true attempt of rebuild, because if we didn't have a vote, if we didn't have an auto bid, there's no way that you can rebuild a conference without those. I know it's still very short-sighted, but that's the window that we were given to rebuild a conference within. So I think at that point it was dead. It was gone. I do think that we can't really lose sight of anything that happened historically, though, because I feel like there was a moment with Oregon State where there was the rebuild was the best possible outcome. There was a moment with Oregon State and Washington State. I'm talking about most plausible and most best outcome.
Okay. Say more.
For plausibility.
Most plausible.
Yeah. And the best outcome from the most plausible outcome. That's what I'm getting at. And then there was another one of absorbing the best of the, AAC and Mountain West. But at this point, there will be there will be a low, and we talked about this again in the past when these options were still in front of us. There will be a rebuilt college football, college athletics governing body. Mm-hmm. It will contain the schools that are not in the SEC, that are not in the Big Ten, or at least not their football programs. They will compete against each other with regionality. I mean, this is too smart to overlook, and they will negotiate a TV deal either within two divisions or as one division and go bring that to the table. It would ruin college athletics if the Big 12 was like, now we're done, because they'll be left out. ACC is going to not look how it does right now. Yeah. Most likely they're going to be left out. If you're pinned against each other as like these like half remaining or super broken conferences, and you're not working together, then you're never going to succeed. So I don't think that the leaders of these conferences are sitting here being like, now screw you all, we're getting the last like NFL junior deal that's on the table, and because there is none. No. And so I know it's like we need to get in the Big 12, or I guess I'll take an ACC, but I don't really want to be there because they're not looking good. We definitely don't want to be in the Mountain West. Dude, all of us are going to be in the same damn thing in literally 2 or 3 years. All of us. And like, it almost doesn't really matter where we end up, because we're going to end up in the same position as everybody else, and which is not in the Big Ten and not in the SEC.
Right. And
so while I'm intrigued, because I do think that optics matter when it comes to negotiation, and maybe it's not the equal revenue share model. If you're not in the conference, it won't help your cause when you go to the negotiation table with this uneven revenue share. But when it comes to being just like forgotten, there is no way, because if we are forgotten because we're in a Pac-2 and just never made it to the Big 12, literally every other school will be also forgotten in the eyes of the nation's like media. Like, we're not going to get any TV deals. You think the Big 12 is going to get a TV deal when their deal's up? If the ESPN and Fox is only focused solely on the two major conferences that they deem to be the major conferences, like, why would they bring anything else in the loop?
They would get a deal.
I think, yeah.
I'm talking about a major TV deal. I'm talking like one that isn't just like a 20 mil a year, 18 mil a year, 50 mil a year. We're all going to end up in the boat where we're going to be splitting some piece of the pie. And if you're not in the SEC, you're not in the Big Ten, you're splitting that pie.
I would agree. I agree with most of that. I think that for as much as we talk about Bob Yormark or Bob Yorkmeyer on this podcast,
Bob
Yorkmeyer. He is
Brott. His name is Brott now. It's just
Brock Heward.
No, Brat's like a never mind. Yeah, like a sausage.
like a German bratwurst.
Yeah.
We're almost at
bratwurst.
He is really like impressive in how he's going about his business and what he's done.
I won't learn his real name, but he's impressive.
But that's why I think he's setting himself up to be the leader of this newer like NCAA. That's how I'm envisioning it.
I could see that happening. I think he thinks that the Big 12 can compete at some level with the Big 10 and the SEC. And I don't think the SEC is a different boat. The Big 10 intrigues me, though, because you do have Michigan and Ohio State and, Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA. Those are bigger brands, too. But you also have like these bottom feeder schools. Like, people think the Big Ten is like this massive, amazing conference, but you have Rutgers and Northwestern and Indiana and Purdue. And like, you have some schools that aren't going to bring a lot of eyes to it. And I do think if you are the Big 12 and you go after Oregon State, Washington State, you get Clemson, Florida State, and then you have like Boise State, maybe San Diego State, you're at least competing on some level with the Big Ten.
Well, yeah,
right?
But that doesn't change the vision or the perspective of Fox. Tell me when Fox has ever cut out of an Ohio State or Michigan game or USC game to go to what? Oklahoma State?
Texas Tech, TCU.
Yeah, they're not going to do it. They just aren't going to do it. So that's why I do feel like it's a fool's errand to try to bolster a conference to go compete with that, because they already are on a path to do something completely different. If you want to own college football, go own college football. Not go chase the dream of NFL junior. And maybe your mark is going that route, and he can't show his hand either. He's got to pretend like he's trying to compete against the Big Ten.
Optically, the Big 12, it looks more like traditional college football than the Big 10 arms race. SEC is still finding a way to do this mostly regionally, and I also just think that that's the fucking moon. Don't even compare yourself. Don't worry about it. That doesn't mean that they're NFL junior and we're not necessarily. But if you want to have a seat at the table, that table goes through the Big 12, in my opinion, regardless of what that table looks like. It's going to be different tables, but there is still money to be made on these not NFL junior broadcasts and broadcasting windows.
I agree.
I think there will be tiers to that grouping as well.
Yeah,
and I think there will be bigger
tiers
risk.
At grouping, but we're all going to end up there, and I don't think that we're going to get left behind when it's all said and done.
Oregon State will exist,
upper tier,
the
upper tier of those athletic conferences or athletic conference with divisions. I mean, I'm just trying to calm the nerves of people being like, if this doesn't happen, like, we're so fucked. Like, I don't think that's the case. I think it's definitely beneficial. It totally helps us out. We should pursue it. But if it doesn't come to fruition, or maybe it will take till 2026 because of legalities and litigations and other lawsuits that we impose.
Other L words.
Yeah. But it doesn't change the fact that we're not going to the Big Ten. We're not going to the SEC. Therefore, we don't have to worry about what they're going to go do or competing with them. We just need to optically, in the eyes of the presidents of the universities, in the eyes of the fans, and I guess in the eyes of some of the networks, be good enough, valuable enough to be an upper echelon of this new governing body of college athletics. And it will come.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting, it's just a complex problem, because if you don't have an answer, it makes recruiting super hard. And if you, let's say, get into a scheduling agreement with the Big 12 next year, and you don't have an answer for these recruits of saying, like, you might be playing in the Mountain West, you might be playing in the Big 12. We don't know. It's going to make recruiting harder, and it's going to make us look a lot worse when we're playing these Big 12 schools. It's just a very complex problem. But I think I do think that, like, the Big 12 isn't going to take all of the, to your point, like, the Big 12, you are going to be separated away from schools that are not in the Big 12, because it's all coming down to revenue share. And, like, do you bring a brand that will increase revenue share, or at least add to that revenue share, and not, like, be a leech and suck it away? And if you bring on, like, I don't want to use Wyoming because Wyoming fans are awesome, but, like, New Mexico State.
Yeah, fuck
right?
them.
Like, if you bring in the New Mexico State, like, they are going to deplete your overall brand, and it's going to mean less money for the other schools. So, like, like, they're not going to bring in a New Mexico State.
Right.
And I think those schools do get left out.
Can I say one thing on the moving forward the other way by rebuilding the Pac-12? And then we got to get to the Olympics, because we've talked about this long enough. But the people who want to say the Big 12 can kick rocks, why don't we rebuild this primarily with West Coast football and do it our own way, which I think comes from a place of good intentions. But pretty much all of those plans have been like, take these 6 teams from the Mountain West, maybe these, whatever WCC teams, a different team here or there, you're always ignoring certain programs with this. And what I don't want Beaver fans to lose sight of is that just because this is college football and there's so many evil, nameless suits who are getting rich off of this, going through what we went through in the summer of 2022 and the summer of 2023, I don't want us to forget about the humane element of this. And just because you don't know personally a fan of the Nevada Wolfpack doesn't mean that the people like you in that community like don't exist. So I don't want to do a new Frankenstein conference where we take who we perceive to be the 6 best teams in the Mountain West. And a lot of these like just sort of proposals or ideas of what teams would make a dope conference, a lot of them are leaving out Fresno State. And that would piss me off if we took 6 teams from the Mountain West and not Fresno State, a team with a rabid fan base, often a pretty good team, and a stadium that's fucking falling apart, and that stadium being the only reason they weren't brought in. And so then we get our seat at the table, but to do it, we kick down this other fan base and just the wheel just keeps spinning and someone else is left out. Like, I don't want that to happen. And I think that's a naive and overly optimistic thought that could stop happening, but I wouldn't want us to be directly a part of it. That's the ethical thing that I would feel gross about. I would not feel gross about Oregon State doing anything unethical to just get its ass in the Big 12 right now, which doesn't involve fucking over any teams in the Mountain West or the West Coast Conference or teams of any other tier. And that's the way my conscience has perceived this whole kind of reshaping aspect of it.
Yeah. I'm into that. Again, we're going to all end up in the same boat, the kind of level of that boat we're on.
It's so many of these things that get to it. It's like none of this matters.
What level of the Titanic we're on?
And today was like Michigan for sure cheated in a lot of ways. And Harbaugh gave an absolute non-answer to it. And they're still getting their national championship and won't be punished at all. So none of this really matters. Your dynasty in college football 25 is just as real as whatever the hell this is that we're talking about. Jade Carey won another fucking medal because she is a boss. Bronze medal in the vault final that we were confused about the start time of last week, but it did happen. And Jade won bronze with a near perfect vault routine. When you finish with a medal on the same podium as Simone Biles, you know you did something right. So Jade Carey, who had already brought a gold medal back to Corvallis, brings another gold medal in the team final and another bronze medal in the vault final. So Jade, we are immensely proud of you.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we are. Yeah, Jade, congratulations. 3-time Olympic gold medalist. That's incredible. That's amazing. For somebody that took a very untraditional path towards being an Olympian, in the sense of like her training was never solely geared towards, international competition. So, and she, in her off seasons of Olympic competitions, she just absolutely crushing it for Oregon State. And
which is sweet.
The part that I'm curious to hear from her about, and I'm not going to ask her about this. I'm going to wait.
Wait, is she
happens,
here?
But
is Jade Carey joining?
No, Jade Carey at the 2-hour mark of
the 2-hour mark of the show.
Thank you for waiting the 2 hours, Jade.
Yeah, in the studio the whole time too, just not saying anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's not here.
But she did say when she was interviewed after the medal, the bronze medal, her and Simone were being interviewed, and she says, like, it was the perfect way to finish it. And there are people chattering on X specifically about, does this mean she's retiring Olympic competition? She's
from all competition?
In her early 20s now. Not all competition. But what I took it as, if I'm going to just make a wild guess, is she wanted to come back and have her redemption moment on the vault. She did get that moment. She succeeded at that moment. She did a wonderful job in Paris. And her turn at the Olympics this time was now done. And she finished it off with the bronze medal. That's how I took it. But I am curious to hear if she does address this or if she just ignores it all and comes out again in 4 years. Is it LA? I think it's LA. So maybe she'll want
it is LA.
Yeah, maybe she'll want to compete in her home country. So we'll see. But just a little tidbit I caught and something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, that's That's a good call out. And Simone Biles was the oldest person on a women's gymnastics team, on a U.S. women's gymnastics team in the history of the U.S. women's gymnastics team.
Yeah, but
right?
that's because they get them in there when they're like 16, 17.
No, but my point being that Jade is she 21?
Yeah.
21, and Simone Biles is 26. So Jade would be 25 at the next Olympics. So that would, in the world of gymnastics.
No, Jade's 24.
Wait, Jade's 24?
Yeah.
No, she's a junior.
Yeah, but she didn't enroll
immediately
at first because of the Olympics, and then it got delayed.
Got it. Okay.
So, yeah.
Interesting. Either way, I hope Oregon State athletic department does have a masseuse on retainer for Jade's neck, because that is going to be sore coming back and having 3 total medals.
There you go.
Now.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Congrats, Jade.
Yeah.
Way to represent Oregon State, making Beaver
and
Beaver fans very proud.
And if she is retiring, then hell of a fucking career, and salute, Jade. So no bad news, just news. And Jade Carey continues to be our queen, and we bow down.
Yes. Congrats, Jade.
We are over 2 hours, so we need to get the hell out of here.
One last thing. Shout out to Stevie Thompson for holding his own and looking, in my opinion, the best player on the court.
He was the best player on the court.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Anthony Edwards' windmill dunk was pretty cool, but the way Stevie watched him was even cooler.
Oh, I'm glad you saw that too. I was like, does this make you mad or sad, Terry?
No, I was looking at it, I was looking at everyone in the background of the photo. I was like, that's Stevie.
You can tell by the hair, man. The hair is
best hair.
You're the best looking dude on that poster. No offense, Ant. Yeah, shout out Stevie. For sure. Yeah. Shout out us for episode 152.
Let's go.
We're proud.
The gold medal of episodes.
Gold medal.
It is the gold medal of episodes.
Mm-hmm. Another perfect episode, another gold medal. Steve Johnson really did the heavy lifting on this one, but like I said, happy to just pass that man the ball. 101 ways to make a layup, or whatever the number was. Thank you again to Steve Johnson. There is good things down the pipe for Oregon State men's basketball.
Yes,
I absolutely. Can feel it, and we can hear it because we just heard it from the legend himself, member of the Orange Express, Steve Johnson. And most importantly, thank you to you, the listener, who has definitely given us a 5-star review somewhere on Apple or Spotify, liked and subscribed on YouTube, on TikTok. I'm not going to go. I haven't ever been on TikTok, and I'm not going anytime soon. But if any of you want to go like things on TikTok, maybe go say nice things about me specifically to outweigh the people who said I was crazy that Oregon State might end up in the Big 12. It's weird. They said I was stupid and wild, and this line of thinking is why Oregon State's a second-rate school by someone who definitely has a bachelor's and master's degree, I'm sure. Yeah, come at me. Yeah, but because no one's ever done any seedy underbelly things to get money in the history of college athletics. Yeah, I'm so insane, you guys.
Between the three of us, we have 4 degrees.
That's true.
Well,
the dynamite dropping
3 degrees.
Yeah,
that's one per person.
And an almost one. Yeah, it is one per person. That's all anyone.
That's not what anyone came here for. You came here for 2 hours and 6 minutes of perfect podcasting, and you almost got it. So thank you to the listener for listening to this episode of the Belligerent Beavs Podcast. And tune in again next week, for gosh darn sakes. We'll be back here with another exciting episode as we keep marching towards the start of football season. Fall camp is in full swing. We'll get to talk more actual X's and O's football and stuff happening between the lines. I can't wait.
Yes.
Me too.
And the final shout outs, of course.
Let's go.
To my best friends from college, my dear buds who are here with me every week. Benjamin Lawrence, Sebastian Wehage, a.k.a. Benny with the good quaff, a.k.a. Benny with the floral formal shirt showing off his Irish tattoo on his clavicle.
Oh,
I don't know if that one's going to stick. A.k.a. Benny Bedlam, a.k.a. Benny Blastoff, a.k.a. Benny Burner, a.k.a. Benny Bullgame, a.k.a. Benny Scoops. I haven't used that one for a while. Maybe you get some more scoops pretty soon. I love saying scoops like that. And he is at Benny L 1986 on social media channels. And the man on the ones and twos, keeping us in line, making sure that these things go up on time. JP Bertram,
on time,
a.k.a. Bay P, a.k.a. Bay from the Bay, at JP Bertram on Instagram. And he's at the Trill J on Twitter. That's at the _Trill_J, because he's too Trill to be real. And I have been and will continue to be Terry Horseman, that guy ranting about the Big 12 on TikTok, despite not having a TikTok and not caring about what you're saying about me on TikTok. I don't give a fuck.
Unless it's good things.
So I know I haven't really, we're pretty much just showing our faces, but I got a manicure recently. So talk about how good my nails look. And haircut too recently. It's a real day of beauty.
Oh, it looks, yeah.
Take care of yourself. Man. Everyone.
Yeah.
Bleach your hair.
Bleach your hair. Yeah. Go bleach your hair, go to therapy, all that good stuff. At Terry Horseman.
You'll need
Twitter.
therapy if you're bleaching your hair.
At Savage Horseman on Instagram.com. That's how you know to go ask someone about therapy. I can answer those questions. Look at my hair. And follow the show at Belligerent Beavs on Twitter, at Belligerent Beavs everywhere else. TikTok, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Blue Sky, Facebook, MySpace,
subscribe on YouTube,
Napster. Please subscribe on YouTube. People are giving us more reviews on Spotify too. We're still stuck at that stupid 4.8 average though. So give us a 5-star review on Spotify.
How?
I don't know.
We're not 4.8 students.
We're not 4.8.
We're totally
4.9.
Yeah.
I got a 4.9, which is impossible.
That is so impossible.
That's how high I was. Just kidding. Oh my God, it's that point in the episode where it's been just a little too crazy. But we will be back again next week, maybe possibly starting to think about potting for less than 2 hours at a time. But either way, whether it's an hour, 2 hours, 8 hours, no matter.
69 hours.
69 hours. And
420 hours.
Minutes. 69 conferences for 69 teams and 69 guys. You can't spell chop 'em without hope. So, chop 'em.
Chop 'em.
Chop 'em.
Beavs back, baby.
And thank you, Mr. Steve Johnson.